It's a celebration of America's freedom. Welcome to the Marc Scaringi Show. The Marc Scaringi Show is your place for a weekly discussion on making America great again. The important political and legal issues of the day, a celebration of the Constitution, and traditional American values. Marc is a practicing attorney, a former senatorial candidate, a Donald J. Trump-endorsed delegate, and a defender of the Constitution. His goal? To put America first. And now, celebrating America's freedoms, here's attorney Marc Scaringi.
Well, good afternoon and welcome to the Marc Scaringi Show. This is your place on the dial for constitutional conservatism. This is where we talk about the important political and legal issues of the day from the perspective of putting America first. And welcome to my listeners here on WHP 580 AM and iHeartRadio and Harrisburg 100 Facebook Live and the various other Facebook Live sessions that we have running. You're welcome to call in and let me know what your thoughts are. It's 717-540-0580. That's 717-540-0580. Or you can put a comment on one of the Facebooks live, and we'll try to respond to your comments. Today we're talking about Nancy Pelosi's fake impeachment inquiry. Pelosi's impeachment is a joke. And that's the title of my column in Penn Live and the Harrisburg Patriot News. It just went up today, this morning, so you can check out pennlive.com and take a read of my column discussing Nancy Pelosi's impeachment joke, and that will be the opening statement for today's show. So I'll deliver that opening statement, and then we'll open up the phone lines for your questions and comments. If you'd like to criticize what I have said in my opening statement, you're welcome to do so. You're welcome to cross-examine me on the facts and legal conclusions that I set forth in this opening statement, or give us your opinion on how Nancy Pelosi and the House Democrats are handling the impeachment of the President of the United States. So here goes. Ever since Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi uttered into existence the official impeachment inquiry on September 24th of 2019, Republicans had been demanding the full House vote on a resolution specifically authorizing, as the House had done in the impeachments of former presidents, and establishing fair rules for it. Weeks later, Pelosi announced she was giving Republicans what they wanted. But on Halloween Day, Republicans got a trick instead of a treat. Democrats passed H.R. 660, House Resolution 660, which simply resolved that the House committees continue doing what they were doing and proposed some rules going forward that are far from fair for the man Democrats have accused of high crimes and misdemeanors. In addition to punting on the request for a specific authorization, the resolution denies President Trump some basic rules of fairness. It gives Democrats veto power over Republicans' use of the subpoena while placing no limit on Democrats. It requires House Republicans to submit their witness list to the Democratic Committee chairman for approval, with no similar requirement on Democrats. It does not afford the president the right to counsel in the House Intelligence Committee, where the bulk of the impeachment proceedings have occurred and will resume. It authorizes the continued use of the Top Secret Intelligence Committee, even though this has nothing to do with national security, and that committee is not intended for and has never been used for impeachments before. The resolution voted in favor of by the House Democrats does require the Intelligence Committee to designate open hearings, which have now been scheduled by Adam Schiff. But because the resolution fails to provide the president with the right to counsel in the Intelligence Committee, these hearings will occur without the president's counsel, and thus they deny him the right and the ability to defend himself. Furthermore, Pelosi's H.R. 660 doesn't undo the damage that's already been done. For over a month now, Democrats have held closed-door impeachment proceedings without the presence of the president's attorneys, while refusing to allow the Republicans the right to call their own witnesses and present their own evidence, and in some cases limiting Republicans' right to cross-examine the Democrats' witnesses. Now, in what were supposed to be top-secret proceedings, Democrats released the opening statements of certain witnesses and leaked out testimony they believe to be favorable to them. Again, while denying the president the right to even participate. Pelosi's resolution does not and cannot undo nearly a month of secret, one-sided work done by House Democrats on the Intelligence Committee. Pelosi's chicanery involving the impeachment vote is nothing new to House Democrats. House Intelligence Committee Chairman Adam Schiff infamously kicked off the inquiry by making up words Trump allegedly said during his telephone call with the Ukrainian president. Remember that from a few weeks ago. Because the transcript of the call and the statements of the Ukrainians themselves revealed there was no crime, Schiff had to make it up. Schiff's fabrication is reminiscent of the former head of the secret police in the Soviet Union, Lavrentiy Beria's famous boast, "You bring me the man, and I'll show you the crime." But over a month into the official impeachment inquiry, and many months into the unofficial one, Democrats still have not shown us the crime. Now, rest assured, if the president had committed a high crime or misdemeanor, Democrats would have put the name of that crime in neon lights on top of the Capitol building. Instead, Pelosi went on the late-night talk show of the left-wing Stephen Colbert, and she tried to explain why she's impeaching the president. You have to Google the bit. It's remarkable. She giggled, laughed, and repeatedly said, "It's about the Constitution," while boasting that she's throwing a punch for the children. She also stated solemnly, Nancy Pelosi that is, that no one is above the law. But then she failed to identify what law the president violated. In short, even though Pelosi has no evidence of any crime, she has the power, so she'll throw the punch. Now, to add a veneer of legality, Nancy Pelosi claimed the president violated his oath. Whatever that means, it will be enough to impeach the president in the House. That's because Democrats have the majority and are licking their chops to take out this president who beat them in 2016. And there is historical precedent for impeaching a president for non-criminal conduct. Former President Andrew Johnson, who like Trump was despised by the opposition party and the media of the day, was impeached by the House for various non-criminal acts. These are what we refer to as high misdemeanors in the parlance of the Constitution. But here's the rub. Pelosi knows her impeachment will die in the Senate, just like Johnson's and Clinton's did. Yet she'll use these impeachment proceedings as the country moves into the 2020 presidential re-election to land as many punches against the president as she can. Her performance on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert reveals the truth. She's got nothing, but her impeachment inquiry, although a joke and a political stunt to her, is being taken with the utmost seriousness by the president's 62 million loyal supporters. Each punch Nancy Pelosi throws at Trump hits half of America, the half that put Trump in the White House and kept Congress in the hands of the Republicans in 2016. And now, thanks to this impeachment, it will happen again. In the end, Pelosi's punch will go down in history as one of the biggest haymakers that missed its mark and ended up knocking out her own political party. Well, there's today's opening statement. We're going to take a brief commercial break. When we get back, I want to hear your thoughts, comments, and criticism. Stay tuned. You're listening to The Marc Scaringi Show.
Now, more of Marc Scaringi on News Radio WHP 580.
And welcome back to the Marc Scaringi Show, your place on the dial for constitutional conservatism. This is where we talk about the important political and legal issues of the day from the perspective of putting America first. And thanks for listening here on WHP 580 and iHeartRadio and Harrisburg 100 Facebook Live. You're welcome to call in 717-540-0580. That's 717-540-0580, or comment live on the various Facebook Lives we've got running right now. And let me know what you think about my opening statement that Nancy Pelosi's impeachment is a joke. You can also see that's the title of the column that I have currently running on Penn Live in the Harrisburg Patriot News, so you can take a look at it there. And let me know what you think. We have some Fox News is reporting that the House Republicans have put out their own list of witnesses they'd like to hear from in the upcoming public hearings, and it's been reported that the House Intelligence Committee Chairman Adam Schiff has scheduled public hearings for next week. They announced that on Wednesday that they have three witnesses lined up. We're going to hear from William Taylor, the top U.S. diplomat in the Ukraine, George Kent, a top State Department official, and former U.S. ambassador to Ukraine, Marie Yovanovitch. All three of those individuals previously testified during the closed-door depositions run by the House Intelligence Committee in that top-secret room in what President Trump refers to as Adam Schiff's basement. The opening statements of those individuals were released by House Democrats, and then we heard bits and pieces of the testimony that were leaked out by Democrats, and also that were commented upon by both Democrats and Republicans. But now those individuals, Bill Taylor, George Kent, and the former ambassador to Ukraine, Marie Yovanovitch, will take the stand once again in a public hearing. However, this is still within the House Intelligence Committee. So even though it's a public hearing, which is better than a closed-door secret session like they've had for the past month, still the president does not have the right to counsel at the public hearing. That right was not included in Nancy Pelosi's House Resolution 660 that passed in the House by a vote of every Democrat except two, and it was opposed by every single Republican. And we're seeing the consequence of Nancy Pelosi denying President Trump, he's the accused person in the impeachment proceedings, yet he does not have the right to defend himself in the House Intelligence Committee's impeachment hearing. That sounds anti-American to me. In America, we have the rule of law. We have the idea of fundamental fairness, that individuals who are accused of high crimes and misdemeanors, regular crimes, individuals who are the subject of civil lawsuits have the right to counsel, to represent them, and participate in the proceedings. Let's take some phone calls. We've got lots of people lined up. We're going to start with Sandy from Mechanicsburg. You're on the Marc Scaringi Show.
Thanks, Mark, for taking my call. I just wanted to ask your opinion. As I see it, obviously I think the president did nothing wrong because I read the transcript, and everybody can see that. But in the media, which is an arm of the Democrat Party, is beating the drum 24/7, no matter whether it's ABC or CNN or NBC. And I'm just concerned that it's gaining momentum, because if you look at the stats from Fox News, 50% of Americans say that the president should be impeached. And it's really very, very, very concerning that they're going to win in the media, because that's their goal, to beat him up and get Americans to say, well, I don't really know what he did, but he must have done something, because they're constantly talking about impeachment. So, I mean, is that the way you see it? I just feel like people are sick of the chaos, and they're tired of. They're not sure what exactly is going on, the average Joe Blow, but they know he's done something wrong because the media is talking about it 24/7.
Well, you raise very good points, and let me respond by uttering the cliche that I trust the American people to get this right. Regarding the polls, some of the polls don't look good for the president with regard to impeachment. But remember the polls in the 2016 presidential election. They were unanimously opposed to then candidate Trump being successful in the general election. And he defied the polls. Remember, the media were stunned on election night. And so we'll probably get a similar outcome with regard to the impeachment hearing that's going on in the Congress today. It seems to me that, I mean, look at the impeachment of President Clinton. The American people were opposed to that impeachment. That didn't do well in the polls either, and that failed in the United States Senate. But even in that case, President Clinton clearly committed several criminal acts. He violated several statutes of the United States Crimes Code. No question about that. Nevertheless, he was not convicted in the United States Senate. A part of that is because the American people did not think that, even though Bill Clinton committed several crimes, they didn't think that those crimes rose to the level of the types of crimes for which a president should be removed from office. And then look at what we have with President Trump. The Democrats cannot even come up with a crime. They can't even name a crime. And take a look at Google Nancy Pelosi on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert. And she, she's always saying how solemn and grave this proceeding is, and that she prays for our president, that she moves forward through the impeachment prayerfully. But yet watch her on that show. She giggles, she laughs. It's a joke. And she can't come up with any crime that the president committed. So she's going to rest her laurels on this amorphous abuse of office or violation of the oath that the American people are just not going to buy. It's just not enough to remove a president. Sandy from Mechanicsburg, thanks for calling. Appreciate having the benefit of your views. Let's talk to Ellen from Hanover. You're on the Marc Scaringi Show.
Oh, hi, Mark.
Yes, go ahead, Ellen.
There was a dial tone noise. Okay, I have some comments to make about the Democrat Party in general. It's not very flattering. Now, my father, he was a pretty astute man, and over 50 years ago, he saw the leftward leaning of the Democrat Party. So I don't think they've really changed so much as showing their true colors finally. And Nancy Pelosi, she is an object lesson in that she should have quit a long time ago. I also see her as clearly an accessory to murder, the killing of all those unborn children, and also what's happening on the border, because the openness encourages the cartels and this sort of thing. She's also a little crazy. I'm reminded of the saying of the Greeks, whom the Lord wishes, or gods, they say, to destroy, he first makes mad.
That's right.
And in terms of Democrats in general, they should come out of their blind loyalty and their denial and all this, because in a sense they're accessories too to the things I already mentioned, and they should either change parties or stay home.
Well, it is surprising. No, there's no question that I think you're right. The Democratic Party has become even more increasingly leftist. Look at the leading candidates in the Democratic presidential primary right now, with Bernie Sanders, an avowed socialist, and we have Elizabeth Warren, who is embracing and advocating essentially the same positions as Bernie Sanders. And Nancy Pelosi has always been a very astute politician. And Ellen, I'm going to hang up because there's a little bit of a feedback here. I'm going to hang up with you, but I'm going to try to answer your question. Let's see if that improves things. I think that does, yes. And so Ellen from Hanover was explaining that, well, my response is that I think Nancy Pelosi is typically a rather astute politician. And remember how long, for many, many months, Pelosi, she kind of hemmed and hawed and resisted the strong push by the left wing of her party. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ilhan Omar, and others, Maxine Waters, to impeach this president. Pelosi pushed back on that. She didn't want an impeachment because she knew that would harm her chances of retaining power, her power in the House of Representatives. But she then switched, and it looks like she probably is seeing how powerful the left wing is in her party. She's seeing that the top runner Democratic presidential candidates, Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, are from the left, and so perhaps Pelosi is making a political calculation that there are enough of the American people who will support this impeachment effort of hers, or perhaps she's kind of doing a little bit of a bait and switch here. Perhaps she's kind of throwing some red meat to her base by launching this official impeachment inquiry and seeing how far it goes and seeing how many blows she can land on the president. And then perhaps she'll pull back when she realizes she does not have a high crime or misdemeanor, that she does not have what she needs in order to galvanize the country behind her effort. And perhaps she'll then pull back and she won't launch sponsor a House resolution calling for the impeachment and a vote by the House to impeach. Because she's been very clear, even when there was a little confusion with regard to her announcement for this House resolution. There was some confusion. Some thought that she was calling for the actual impeachment vote. And then remember, she gave that flippant comment to a reporter who was staked out in front of her office, and Pelosi said, no, this is not an impeachment vote. So it's possible that she won't go through with it, because if she does, as I've predicted in my column on PennLive.com and in my opening statement, I think that the American people will not be with her on this. And I think that she is going to, this is a wild haymaker punch if they actually go for it. And she will miss her mark. She will not take down this president. The Senate is already, it's very clear, the Senate's not going to convict. So she's not going to get the result that that the left wing of her party wants so desperately. It's going to be a big failure. And she's going to take a big swing and a miss, and she's really going to hurt her party's chances in 2020 because she's going to galvanize Donald Trump's 63 or 64 million loyal supporters, and she's going to cause harm to a couple of dozen House Democrats who are sitting in congressional districts that President Trump won in 2016. More about Nancy Pelosi's joke of an impeachment when we return from this brief commercial break. You're listening to The Marc Scaringi Show.
Let's get back to the Marc Scaringi Show on News Radio WHP 580.
And welcome back to the Marc Scaringi Show, your place on the dial for constitutional conservatism. This is where we talk about the important political and legal issues of the day from the perspective of putting America first. We're talking about Nancy Pelosi's impeachment and how it is a joke. And I've delivered my opening statement, and we're taking some calls from the listeners of the show. And you're welcome to take a look at the column of that title in PennLive.com and the Harrisburg Patriot News, and read it for yourself and comment and let me know what you think, whether I'm right or wrong. It's possible that I could be wrong. I am making the prediction that if Nancy Pelosi and the House Democrats continue to pursue this impeachment and go for the big haymaker punch, go for the impeachment vote, they're likely to get it. The Democrats have the majority. They're licking their chops to impeach this president. The mainstream media is overwhelmingly on the side of the Democrats, on the side of impeachment. They're actively assisting the Democrats in this impeachment effort. They're doing whatever they can to remove this president, but it will lose in the Senate. And the American people, despite some of these polls, the American people are not for it. The American people are by and large a very fair-minded group. We have the rule of law and fundamental fairness. That is a big part of who we are and a big part of the founding of this country. It's enshrined in our Constitution and our body of law for hundreds and hundreds of years. And I think the American people will see that this president has been framed on the Russian collusion hoax and is basically being set up with regard to the impeachment hoax with the release of the whistleblower's name. We've learned much more about him. We'll talk a little bit more about that. I wanted to get into one development. It's a little bit in the weeds, but I think it's telling. House Democrats withdrew a subpoena on Wednesday for a former national security official to testify in the impeachment inquiry into the president. Democrats pulled the subpoena for Charles Kupperman. And Charles Kupperman served as a deputy to former National Security Advisor John Bolton. About a week after the judge fast-track this particular case. So just to take a step back, House Democrats have been sending subpoenas over to the White House and to the executive branch, and the president, through his counsel, is informing, and through the Department of Justice, executive branch officials, those working within the White House, that they are not to comply with these subpoenas. The White House is asserting executive privilege and defending itself from a legislative branch that is overreaching its authority. There's been a lawsuit that has been filed. The lawsuits have been filed pertaining to these subpoenas. And apparently the Democrats in this lawsuit are they're withdrawing the subpoena that they had sent to Charles Cooperman. And the reason why is because the judge scheduled oral arguments on that subpoena on December 10th. And the Democrats are saying they don't want to wait that long. So that tells you, that's kind of a sign that we know the Democrats want to wrap up the impeachment vote prior to December 10th. Otherwise, they would not have withdrawn the subpoena of Charles Cooperman, John Bolton's assistant, and they would have continued with that litigation. But they have withdrawn the subpoena, so that litigation should be over with now. And Charles Cooperman is considered a prominent witness since he was on the July 25 telephone call between Trump and the Ukrainian president. But Democrats don't want to wait for him. That's a pretty telling development. This also means that former National Security Advisor John Bolton will likely not testify either. Bolton has stated he will challenge the subpoena in court. Now, to date, Democrats have not issued a subpoena to Bolton, so it appears that Democrats are going to move forward without hearing from the president's National Security Advisor, John Bolton. And I think that's a pretty remarkable development in this case, because John Bolton always makes Trump loyalists a little bit nervous. John Bolton was a never-Trumper who got into the White House. I think it was a big mistake for President Trump to hire John Bolton as his national security advisor. I've long been a critic of Bolton's warmongering, and I think that I can't imagine why you would want to bring this man into the White House. Nevertheless, the president did. Bolton wasn't there very long before the president kicked him out. But John Bolton has made some damaging statements about Rudy Giuliani and about Rudy Giuliani and perhaps the president, or at least Rudy Giuliani, circumventing the normal channel of things, kind of circumventing the State Department in communicating with Ukrainians regarding these particular issues. And that rankles career diplomats, it rankles career bureaucrats for anybody to go around them. They think that they own the field on foreign policy. They think that the president can't have his own thoughts. The president can't have his own advisors who are outside of the State Department or outside of the national security or the intelligence community, that is considered to be a great big sin in Washington, D.C. However, a quick look at history teaches us that throughout the history of our country, presidents have used friends and advisors who were not who were not officials in the executive branch, who were not members of the State Department or the Defense Department or others, to assist the presidents and even to communicate with foreign dignitaries and foreign officials on matters of great importance. Harry Truman did, Franklin Delano Roosevelt did, and the list of presidents goes on and on. But that does upset the career bureaucrats who are in the State Department. They don't like anybody circumventing them, and John Bolton is not any different. And so Bolton said some damaging things about Rudy Giuliani. So something about Rudy Giuliani doing a drug deal, and that Bolton didn't want to be a part of Giuliani's drug deal. So why Democrats would not subpoena Bolton and fight and go to court to get a judge to enforce their subpoena on Bolton, is, I think, a big sign here that Democrats are just going to go with what they've got, essentially, and try to get this thing over with. They know they've got the votes in the House. They know they're going to get the impeachment, so they don't really care about going after what could be some material witnesses that might support or advance their cause. But they're going to go forward without Charles Cooperman, and it looks like they're going to go forward without former National Security Advisor John Bolton. Now, and the same goes for White House Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney. Now, remember, Mulvaney was subpoenaed on Thursday to come and testify on Friday. I think he had 11 hours notice to get to the Adam Schiff's basement and start to be deposed by Schiff's lawyers. And the White House said no. Mulvaney is not going to participate in what the White House, through Kellyanne Conway, referred to as a ridiculous, partisan, illegitimate proceeding. Now, interestingly, on the same day, on Friday, Mulvaney filed a motion in court to join as a plaintiff in the lawsuit filed by former White House Deputy National Security Advisor Charles Cooperman that we were just talking about. So Mulvaney wanted to join that suit, the Cooperman suit, but the Cooperman suit looks like it's going away now because the House Dems have withdrawn their subpoena. So it looks like, and I'm sorry this is a bit in the weeds, but it looks like Charles Cooperman, the former assistant to John Bolton, the National Security Advisor, John Bolton, the former National Security Advisor, and the current acting Chief of Staff, Mick Mulvaney, are not going to testify, and the Dems are not going to try to compel them to testify. It looks like the Dems are going to go forward without these key material witnesses. I mean, Mick Mulvaney had that infamous press conference where it appeared as if he was admitting to a quid pro quo. That sent the Democrats and the media, that sent them into paroxysms of pleasure. Basically, they thought they got him, and Mulvaney walked that back a bit. But my goodness, if you're running this impeachment and you want Mick Mulvaney to testify, you want John Bolton to testify, because you know that Mulvaney was intimately involved in putting a pause, shall we say, on the delivery of about $400 million in aid to Ukraine. Mulvaney was the man who did it. And Mulvaney was the man likely who undid it later in the summer. And John Bolton has made damaging statements about not wanting to be a part of Rudy Giuliani's drug deal. But nevertheless, Democrats are going to move forward on this joke of an impeachment hearing without. So there you have that. We have some additional new developments in that apparently Fox News is reporting that House Republicans are calling for Adam Schiff to testify. That should be rather interesting. The Devin Nunes, the ranking member of the we're going to take a brief commercial break, then we'll talk about the latest developments in the impeachment joke that is occurring in Washington, D.C. You're listening to the Marc Scaringi Show. Stay tuned.
Now back to the Marc Scaringi Show on News Radio WHP 580.
And welcome back to the Marc Scaringi Show, your place on the dial for constitutional conservatism. This is where we talk about the important political and legal issues of the day from the perspective of putting America first. We're talking about Nancy Pelosi's impeachment is a big joke. And you can check out, that's the title to my column on PennLive.com. That's there right now. You'll see it in the Sunday edition of the Harrisburg Patriot News, likely. And we've delivered that opening statement today. And we've taken some calls from some of our listeners who have been supportive of what we've said in the opening statement. But if you'd like to cross-examine me or criticize anything that I've said, I've given my opinion on how damaging this will be to House Democrats and to Democratic presidential contenders if Nancy Pelosi continues and goes for the big haymaker punch, puts up the resolution calling for the impeachment and the vote to impeach, which we think she will do that, and how that's going to really hurt Democrats in 2020 and how it's going to galvanize the president and he'll win an even bigger reelection as a result of this impeachment joke that's been going on in the halls of Congress for some time now. And the whistleblower, he's been talked about all over the news, and there was a fun segment on The View where Donald Trump Jr. appeared, and you've got to Google that if you haven't seen it. It's a lot of fun watching Donald Trump Jr. just demolish Whoopi Goldberg and Meghan McCain and Abby Huntsman and Joy Behar and the rest of the gals there on The View. But they were taking Donald Trump Jr. to task because he retweeted the name of the whistleblower, and many media outlets are talking or reporting on the name of the alleged whistleblower. Some media outlets are not. I have no idea what the WHP 580 iHeartRadio statement policy is on that, but the whistleblower is allegedly Eric Eric Ciaramella. He's an Italian. So we'll use the Italian pronunciation, Ciaramella. Apparently, he's a registered Democrat, former Obama administration official. He worked for the former Obama CIA director, John Brennan, who is one of the men who orchestrated the Russian collusion hoax. Brennan is probably, I can't say definitively, but is probably currently under investigation by the Department of Justice for his role in abusing the power of his office to attempt to frame Trump for something he didn't do, which is collude with Russia. So the whistleblower worked for John Brennan, one of the central figures in the Russian collusion hoax, who I'm suspecting is probably a target in a Department of Justice investigation that's been initiated by Attorney General Bill Barr. So the point is, the whistleblower could be a material witness in that criminal investigation involving his former boss, John Brennan. Now, the whistleblower also worked for Joe Biden when Joe Biden was vice president during the time that Biden went to Ukraine and issued the actual quid pro quo to save his son Hunter Biden from that investigation by the Ukrainian prosecutor. The whistleblower could be a material witness for the Department of Justice or the Ukrainian investigation into Joe Biden's quid pro quo. So there are two cases in which this whistleblower could be a material witness because he worked for Joe Biden when Joe Biden was in Ukraine and the point person on U.S.-Ukrainian relations, including U.S.-Ukrainian aid. Hunter Biden was on the board of directors of Burisma, the natural gas company. The natural gas company was under investigation by the Ukrainian prosecutor at the time. The Ukrainian prosecutor has stated that he was just about to interview Hunter Biden. Hunter Biden had lawyers. Lawyers were communicating with the prosecutor. This was an investigation, and the prosecutor was poised to interview Hunter Biden, and then all of a sudden, his dad, Joe Biden's in Ukraine, telling the Ukrainian president that if you don't fire that prosecutor, you're not getting $1.5 billion in U.S. taxpayer dollars. Now, that is a quid pro quo pursuant to the definition of quid pro quo. You either fire that prosecutor who's investigating my son, or you don't get $1.5 billion. And the whistleblower, Eric Ciaramella, he was an aide to Joe Biden on Ukraine. He's a Ukrainian analyst at that time. You've got to be kidding me. He of course, this is an entire hoax and a setup and an attempt to frame the president on Ukraine in the same way they set up the president and tried to frame the president on the Russian collusion hoax. And this young CIA analyst worked for Biden at the time, involved in Biden's Ukrainian policy at the time. He also worked for John Brennan, the CIA director who was one of the leading men who initiated and instigated the Russian hoax. So this whistleblower, alleged whistleblower, he's obviously not a whistleblower, as we've discussed in prior shows. He is a material fact witness in at least one criminal investigation. We know the United States Attorney General Bill Barr is now undertaking a criminal investigation into high-ranking members of the Obama administration, some of whom carried over into the Trump administration, namely James Clapper, the former director of national intelligence under Barack Obama, John Brennan, the former CIA director under Barack Obama, and of course Lisa Page, the FBI attorney. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice. And Peter Strzok, the FBI investigator, and of course the former director of the FBI, James Comey. Those men and that lady, they are likely under criminal investigation by Bill Barr for the Russian collusion hoax that they perpetrated and how they abused the very powerful tools they have, how they abused those tools to try to frame then candidate Trump and then subsequently President Trump. The whistleblower, Eric Ciaramella, he was a figure, he was an assistant to these men at that time in these areas, in these fields, national security, intelligence, and Ukrainian policy. So this young man is a material witness. He must be interviewed. He must be cross-examined. He must be deposed. We've also learned that the whistleblower was allegedly dismissed from his job in the Trump White House. Remember, CIA Director John Brennan put the whistleblower into the Trump White House, and the whistleblower was apparently doing whatever it is that he does. He's a CIA agent who analyzes things in Ukraine, and he was obviously a plant from John Brennan, and dismissed by the Trump administration. Why was he dismissed? Well, he was leaking, apparently, accused of working against Trump, against Trump's foreign policy, and accused of leaking information that is confidential, leaking information that is subject to non-disclosure through our national security laws. Excuse me, I keep losing my voice here. That is a crime. So this whistleblower, he has a lot to answer for. And I see why he very well should be a witness in this impeachment hearing and in, of course, the Department of Justice investigation into the Russian collusion hoax. So we will see how that issue develops. And again, we don't want to get too much into the weeds about the whistleblower. When he worked in the White House for Trump, he actually brought into the White House a Ukrainian-American woman, Alexandra Chalupa, who is at the center of the scandal involving the Democratic National Committee colluding with the Ukrainians in 2016 to interfere in the 2016 presidential election to harm then-candidate Trump and to help then-candidate Hillary Clinton. This Alexandra Chalupa, she worked for the Democratic National Committee, was paid a lot of money by the DNC, and was working actively with Ukrainian officials, including a member of Ukrainian parliament, to expose the financial ledgers of Paul Manafort that were exposed and did do political damage to Paul Manafort, who was then Donald Trump's campaign manager, causing Paul Manafort to resign from the campaign and doing political damage to Donald Trump. That was a woman, Alexandra Chalupa, who was a paid member of the Democratic National Committee, cooperating with, colluding with Ukrainians to interfere in the 2016 presidential election. That is why Donald Trump is so upset that nothing has been done about credible allegations that the Democratic National Committee was colluding with the Ukrainians to interfere in his election in 2016. And obviously nothing has been done to investigate the obvious credible allegations that Joe Biden was involved in a quid pro quo in Ukraine. So there is a lot there's a lot of smoke there for Department of Justice investigators and prosecutors to look into the whistleblower meeting with Alexandra Chalupa, who was a DNC staffer and involved in the collusion with the Ukrainians in the 2016 presidential election, bringing that woman into the White House. What were they talking about? What does the CIA analyst have to talk with the woman who works for the DNC? That should be looked into, certainly. So this whistleblower, my goodness, he is a material witness in three of the biggest fake scandals. In the biggest fake scandal, the impeachment, but he's also a material witness in actual scandals, the Joe Biden quid pro quo, and how the high-ranking members of the Obama administration framed or tried to frame then candidate Donald Trump. So this whistleblower, he's got a lot to say. He's got a lot of talking to do, and hopefully Bill Barr's investigators and prosecutors are going to bring him in and interview him, and hopefully we'll hear from him in the impeachment proceedings. But I highly doubt it, because Democrats want to run away from him as fast as they can. Well, that's about all the time we have today for the Marc Scaringi Show. Thanks for staying with me, and tune in next week, same time, same place.